Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this National Memorial and Museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Francis Thomas Joseph Kilmartin. Francis Kilmartin was born in North Adelaide in February 1885, the second of 9 children born to Thomas and Maria Kilmartin. In March 1915, Kilmartin was working as a bushman in rural South Australia when he volunteered for service in the Australian Imperial Force. He began his training at the Army camp at Keswick near Adelaide, and in June he embarked on the transport ship Canberra and set sail for Egypt. Here he continued training in the large army camps near Cairo. In September 1915, Kilmartin joined the 16th Battalion on the Gallipoli Peninsula. By this stage of the campaign, the Australian forces were holding defensive positions and no major offensives were attempted. By the end of the year, the British commanders had decided to withdraw from the peninsula. Kilmartin returned to Egypt at the end of December. At the beginning of 1916, the AIF was approximately doubled while in Egypt. New battalions were formed, with experienced soldiers providing half of the members of the new units and the remainder made up from recruits from Australia. In this way, every battalion would have a mix of veteran soldiers and fresh recruits. Kilmartin and about half of the 16th Battalion formed the basis for the newly formed 48th Battalion. The new unit sailed to southern France at the end of March 1916, and from there caught trains to the Somme River sector. In August, the battalion entered its first battle on the Western Front at Pozières in northern France. The unit had to defend ground that had been captured earlier by other Australian forces. While in the front line, the 48th Battalion was subjected to intense German artillery barrages, sometimes continuously for hours at a time. After one of these bombardments, Kilmartin was evacuated to a casualty clearing station, suffering from shell shock. The true nature of shell shock was debated during the war. Some thought it was caused by physical effects of blast and shock waves, while others were convinced it was psychological. Kilmartin was evacuated to hospital in France and then to the Lord Derby War Hospital in England. He recuperated there for the rest of the year, rejoining the 48th Battalion in France in December. In March 1917, Kilmartin was appointed to the rank of Lance Corporal. The 48th Battalion took part in the costly and ultimately unsuccessful First Battle of Bullecourt in early April. This French town had been occupied and fortified by German forces and formed a strong point in the defensive position known as the Hindenburg Line. During the battle, which lasted a single day, the unit lost 435 men killed, captured, or wounded. In the summer months, British commanders turned their attention north to the border between Belgium and France. The 48th Battalion participated in the first action of this campaign, an assault on the Belgian town of Mézines. For the first day of the attack, the 48th Battalion was in reserve. On the next day, the 8th of June 1917, the unit entered the front lines to fortify them against German counterattacks. As they advanced, the men came under heavy German sniper and machine gun fire. Kilmartin was one of 20 men of the battalion killed in action that day. He was 32 years old. With no known grave, Today, his name is listed on the Meningate Memorial in Ypres, alongside the names of more than 54,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers who died in Belgium and whose final resting place remains unknown. Two of Kilmartin's younger brothers also served in the AIF. Gunner Dennis Kilmartin served in the 5th Field Artillery Brigade on the Western Front and returned to Australia in 1919 after the end of the war. Private William Kilmartin served with the 43rd Battalion in France and also returned to Australia in 1919. Lance Corporal Francis Thomas Joseph Kilmartin is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Francis Thomas Joseph Kilmartin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.